Recording is now on. Yeah, so anyone who's not here, we'll get a recording. And everybody who's here will get a recording too. So, okay, let's just start with a quick show of hands. Who is working online at the moment?
Done one.
You've done one, great. And Glenna, you've done a few, I suppose. Yeah.
I enjoy groups.
Yes, well, you know, I've done, I'm more happy with groups than one-on-one. And it's also easier for me to do that. Yes, that's it.
So that translates well online. Yeah, yeah. And Michaela, you're doing some.
Yeah, only groups with the acting students. That was much easier than I had a couple of individuals from my former students.
Yes.
Tricky, but it's just a transition. It's kind of a challenge, but we can learn.
Yeah, yeah. Hello, Lasny. Are you appearing? I know Fiona doesn't have a camera.
Yeah, I think that's it.
But hopefully. Hi. Okay, no camera either. Right. So, yeah. So I'm going to cover, as Teresa wrote to us, I'm going to cover how to use Zoom. Oh, Fiona, excellent. Starting an online lesson, the general principles of working online, what skills we need, how to connect and resonate with the pupil, what work you can do online, how to get your pupils to make the leap to go online, how to get payment from them, and the legal stuff. So, and then I'll talk about how you can take it forwards. So I'll just start by saying why I'm interested in online work at all. I started the technique back in 1983, and I was doing a PhD at the time, and I was cracking up because I was really in the wrong place and doing the wrong thing and didn't know it. Unfortunately, my back gave out before my brain did, and it completely seized up, and that took me to Alexander lessons, and it rescued the whole situation. There started a whole new path. So I had lessons for 3 years before training, and then I had 3 years of training at Misha Magadoff's. It was McDonald Line. My first teachers were Carrington Line, and none of them taught me how to work on myself. Not one, ever. It was all hands-on. It was chair work, table work, chair work, table work, and that was it. I was taught to do semi-supine at home, and there was nothing else. And it was very good, but there was nothing else. So when I finished my training, and you know, I built a practice, and it was a good practice, and within 6 months, my use had completely fallen apart. I really didn't know, I sort of just felt shattered. And I thought, I need some new help here. And that's when I went to Miss Goldie. And she told me, has everybody heard of Miss Goldie, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you all know she was a dragon, and she told me in no uncertain terms that I was a mess, and what on earth did I think I was doing teaching the Alexander technique. Alexander would be turning in his grave if he saw what I was doing. I was nowhere near strong enough, blah, blah, blah. And actually, I was completely relieved to hear it, because I knew I was a mess. And most teachers put hands on me and went, oh yeah, free neck, yep, your hips are free. What is there to do? You move nicely. And she saw underneath that. And I thought, well, you know, she can see the mess. So I'm going to put myself in her hands, even if she barrages me with this bollocky language. It doesn't matter. She rebuilt me. She just took me apart. She took away, she somehow stripped off everything I'd learned in my training and my first lessons, and she rebuilt the whole thing. I was in a slump. Within a few lessons, I was in a slump, having been proud of my straight back, and it was 6 months before I could sit up again. And it was difficult keeping my practice going during that. But at the end of that, I worked with her for 4 years. I slowly began to understand. She rebuilt my body in a different way. She rebuilt my thinking. She rebuilt my practice. And the core of it was consciousness. The core of it was how I was thinking and how I was thinking in activity. And the key moment, she berated me all sixth lesson. She said, you know, why are you here? How many lessons have you had with me? 6, Miss Goldie. I don't know why you bother. You have learnt nothing, she said. And she had me in tears all lesson. And a bit of my head was going, I could walk away from this. I don't need to be bothered with this old bat berating me like this. And another part of me thought, I'll show her. And I went home, and in front of my kettle that night, I actually stopped. And I really stopped, and I came to quiet, and then I let something different happen as she'd showed me. And my hand flowed to the kettle, and it made a different relationship with the kettle. And something completely shifted in my thinking in that moment. And that's what she wanted. And of course, that gently led into application work. She wasn't actually teaching me application work, but it very much came out of my work with her. And I would feed back to her how I'd found myself cleaning the shower. Yes, yes, that's it. And she'd watch me when I was there and how I wrote a check or how I put my shoes on. It was all about being conscious in the activity. And so over the years, I evolved hands-off work, and really it came because, as many of you will know, I had a 30-year battle with chronic fatigue syndrome, with ME, and there were years where I was almost too ill to, well, there were years I was too ill to work full stop, but the years either side of that, I had so little strength that I could only put hands for a short period of time in a lesson, and sometimes not. And so I started to evolve hands-off work, where I could actually sit and direct the pupil. And I became aware of just how beneficial those lessons were to the pupil. And so things started to evolve. And the other thing that happened round about that time was my husband became a Reiki master. And so we sort of went on a huge Reiki journey together. And as part of Reiki, those of you who've done Reiki will know they practice absent healing, where somebody goes into the adjacent room. And you take a teddy bear or you picture them in the air, and you have to send the Reiki to this image of them, and you start picking up what's going on in the person. And then afterwards you feed back to each other and you say, you know, they say, I felt you working on your tummy, my tummy. And yes, I was drawn to your tummy. And I was a scientist, I was completely skeptical. And this stuff was just proving to me over and over again. And I got more confident at it and I started to believe it. And this is actually a very important part of our work that we don't really acknowledge. And the third element that added to this work was working with Jando. I think everybody here knows who Jando is. And I took lessons with him, I think about 3.5 years ago now. I took a year of lessons with him. And of course, they were all on Skype and they were amazing. Although initially it was like, fuck, sorry, I didn't say that. What's going on here? You know, that sort of, but actually what he was doing with me completely took me back to Miss Goldie's lessons and what she was doing that I absolutely didn't understand at the time. And it completely, over the time, I started to understand why Goldie was doing some of the physical things that she was doing. And that has been a huge journey in itself. So I started teaching some online lessons myself to teachers who wanted lessons who were in parts of Europe, and then pupils who couldn't make it to lessons. So I've been gently evolving hands-on online work, along with more and more taking hands off pupils here and getting them to think for themselves, finding the words, getting them to find the words. So it's all evolved. And alongside that, of course, I was writing my book and trying to put all this into words. And again, the groups with pupils, pupil groups really helped there, teacher groups really helped there. And the book got finished in February and it's now in production. So hopefully it will be out in December, which is very exciting. So yes, so that's all happening. And then when this COVID-19 crisis came, we put it all together. So, because it's just right, all this is right for online work. So let's start from the beginning on, oh yeah, before I say that, Alexander taught hands-off for the first 20 years of his career. He was teaching breathing to start with. It wasn't until somewhere between 1912 and 1914, they think, that he actually one day realized that his hands that he was just putting on with well, you do that. And he suddenly realized his hands were communicating something other than just, you know, you do that. And And so hands-on work evolved in the early, 1914, 1920, and it very quickly became the technique. And I think in that moment we lost something, because Alexander was all about constructive conscious control. And over the years, it's more and more and more and more and more become about hands. And there are now teachers even writing, the technique is hands-on work. Excuse me, it isn't. The technique is about thinking. Hands-on is a vehicle for that, but it's not the only vehicle. So this is a major opportunity. This crisis, where we've all got to live in our own boxes, is a major opportunity to get back to Alexander's initial mission before he discovered hands. And then we can go back to using hands, and it can only add to our work, and we will have far more tools to our bow. So I think this is a real chance to learn something here. So let's start with the practical stuff. Obviously you're all on Zoom today. Who actually, has anyone not used Zoom yet as a practitioner? Yeah, Enrique? Yeah, you haven't used Zoom as a practitioner. Rosemary, you have? Yeah, a bit. Yeah, okay. So, so I'll go through the Zoom stuff first. Some of you will know it all. If anyone knows more than me, which probably people will, please join in. I started knowing nothing about Zoom, same as everybody else. You just got to get in there and play with the buttons, and you find out how to do it. It's the trick with technology is not being too afraid with it. I learned a lot by watching you haven't, thank you, Fiona. I learned a lot by watching my daughter just getting onto computers and pressing buttons in a way. I can't do that. And she did, and she could. And I thought, well, we can all do that. So when you go onto Zoom, the first thing you'll need to do is actually Google zoom.com. And then when it comes up, you ask for a free sign up. And that will give you unlimited time with one-to-one lessons. If you want to do groups, it will log you out after 40 minutes. I have the full Zoom room, which I've paid for because I'm doing so many groups. If you're doing a lot of groups, it's well worth paying. It's about €172 for the year by the time you have the VAT. But it does mean that your session doesn't just break down after 40 minutes and everybody has to log in again. But if you're just doing one-to-ones, and the free room is just fine. And if you then click on meetings, you'll, and I'll be sending out all my notes afterwards, as well as the video, so you put all this on notes. You click on meetings, and that gives you a drop-down menu, which goes on for miles. There's all sorts of things you can do in that. And, I take it every so often, I go and have a look and see if there's anything else I can assimilate now, because I couldn't take it all in at once. But there's all sorts of things there to play with. What you do is you schedule a meeting on the app, and it then notifies your pupil, and it will then notify you both 30 minutes before the session. I presume you all got a 30-minute notification. Sometimes I don't quite trust that for groups, and then I do what I got Teresa to do it today, put the link into an email and just send it out on an email. And if your pupil can't log in on the day because they actually haven't had the reminder, that's what you do. You just go into your own reminder, cut and paste the link and send it to them, and then they can log in. Zoom meetings, if you go into settings, you can set it so that it will always use your personal ID. Otherwise, it will give you a different Zoom room every time, which can get very confusing. Zoom security was not very good at the beginning of COVID-19, and because so many people are now online, they've actually really had to up the security, because people were bombing the meetings and posting horrible pictures and things, and you really don't want that happening. So the password is now embedded in the link, but if people go into Zoom and put in the meeting ID themselves, they will then be asked for the password. So that's when the password becomes operative. If they just click the link, the password's embedded in it. And that's a little trick a lot of people don't know. To stop people, so you can check who comes into your meetings. You can set a waiting room. I didn't bother to do it today, but you can set a waiting room, then you can see who's outside. And if you don't know them, don't let them in. And it's general advice, don't just post a link on Facebook. that's open to everybody, and certainly not on a public Facebook, unless you have some, a waiting room or something in place to check you're not just going to let in all and sundry. The other way you can secure your meeting is once everybody is in, I could now lock the door, press lock. But that means that if somebody's internet goes down, and you do that on meeting in the session. But if you do that and somebody's internet goes down and they then try and get in again, they won't be able to do it. And in the group, you might not notice that happening. Whereas if there's a waiting room, you'll see them apply to come in again. So I don't use the lock for that reason. For new pupils, I always encourage pupils who haven't used Zoom before, and at the beginning of this crisis, a lot of people hadn't used Zoom. I encourage them to try out the link beforehand and know they could get in. With people who are very unconfident, I met them online in a pre-arranged pre-session just to check they could do it, or said before the lesson, let's allow 10 minutes for you signing up, and maybe I would phone them and talk them through the process as it was happening. People who are more confident, I say, do it at 9 o'clock at night. I won't be on there. So, go in the evening and just go into the room and check you can get in. I think that, again, gives people confidence when they come to the time that they really can make it happen. Gallery and speaker view. Any questions so far? Any comments on all that about getting into the room and logging in?
Penelope, the waiting room setting, does Zoom offer you that setting? Like, how do you establish a waiting room, for example?
Oh, it's when you schedule the meeting, it gives you a list of options. One of which is enable waiting room, and another is enable participants to join beforehand. And for this one, I pressed that, which is why Rosemary was in before I was, I think. So yeah. So for a big group, you can let everybody arrive before you do. Gallery versus speaker room versus speaker. If you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, those of you on your mobiles, it might be in a different place, but you can play with putting yourself onto speaker view and onto gallery view. So you might play with those buttons. And as I'm doing the recording, because I'm the host of the meeting, whatever I press is what will be on the recording. But the pupil can actually change that for themselves. So again, it's important to encourage pupils that they can change the settings as they want. And the other one you can do is to make one person big in the screen. So you can all play it making yourself big, even though I'm doing the speaking. And to do that, you hover the mouse over your own video picture, and you'll find that three little buttons, three little dots appear. And if you press on that, you'll get a whole drop-down menu. And the one you want is pin video. Now, I haven't played with all of these, but if you pin video, then you will come big. Yeah, and then you can unpin video again, and that will take you small again.
Penelope?
Yeah?
I have one question. Can we go back for a second to the meetings? When you send out an invitation, like maybe a day before, where would you do this? In the meeting icon on the
Yes.
schedules?
Yes. What I do is again, when you schedule the meeting, it will first give you that big menu of do you want to enable the meeting room and what code you want to use, and then you have an option of changing the title of it, because otherwise it'll just call it Michaela's personal meeting.
Exactly.
So you can change that to say what's it, workshop or whatever. Then you can change the date and the date and the time.
Correct.
And it only gives you half hours it gives you quarter hours for the start time. It only gives you half hours for the second, for the finish. But you can actually change it manually simply by writing it in, and then it'll hold.
But where do you put the people who are invited in?
And then when you've done all that, you'll then see there's a section that says send invitations, and there's a long box where you put in people's emails.
Oh. I never saw that.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And then, so you can put in as many emails as you want there. And then when you finally press save or whatever it is that you press, it will then give you an option, send invitations.
Okay, good.
And to participants. And if you then change something, it will also give you an option of whether to, so you could change the title and you could bother to send it or not.
Okay, good.
And if you want to do a repeat event, that also is below the date. Then you have the option of sending for this event, the following event, or all events to notify the people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it took me ages to work this all out. So, yeah. Yes. So if you want your to use more than one device, now I haven't really played with this, but some people are clever and they get 2 devices working. So one of which they can have, say, the PC where you can sit face to face, and then the phone where you can roam around the room and put it at different heights. Now, I'm not good at that. If you want to know how to do it, send out a help on Facebook, a post, and I'm sure 100 people will tell you how to do it. Don't ask me that one. I've tried and I've not done it very well yet. Breakout rooms, it's another one I haven't tried yet, but if you're doing a group, I suppose, I guess you've used this one, Glenna, if you're doing a lot of groups, and I shall at some point, but apparently there's a lot of YouTube videos on how to do it, and it means that if you're doing a group, you can get everybody breaking up into pairs, getting them working together, and I think you can then go in and check on all of them, can't you, as the host?
Yes, you can. The hope is that everyone is happy to work with other people, because then some people want to change. Oh, I'd rather be in that room or that room. You know, maybe if you do have a group, you can say it's going to be random and hopefully it will work out. Just to save time. Otherwise, you're helping switch this one to that room and that one to that room, and it can be a little bit cumbersome in terms of administration.
Yeah. Thank you. So, and to share material in lessons, in the sessions, can everyone see there's a green button? I don't know whether you have a green button at the bottom of your screen, do you? Yep, you do, good. And if you press on that, what you'll get is a, I haven't got anything particularly to share at the moment. I can share the whiteboard. If I share the whiteboard, has it happened? Yes, there it goes. And now apparently I can draw on it. So that's quite a clever one. So whatever's on your sort of main, whatever's brought up when you go into the share is what you can then share. So if you want to share pictures, it really helps if you've loaded them, if you've opened the files beforehand. Otherwise, you have to minimize the whole screen to the point where you can actually get at your buttons at the bottom to open up your documents. And it's a bit of a fiddle, but it's certainly possible. Glenna,
there's also a tiny time delay of about 3 to 5 seconds. So it's a great time for inhibition, because you'll press on screen sharing and nothing will come up, and you'll start to panic. But no, just wait and it will come.
Yes, I've noticed that. Thank you. Yes, it's true. There's that sort of pause moment. Yes. Recording sessions. Of course, the huge advantage of Zoom and Skype as well is you can record the lesson for the pupil. And this means that afterwards they can watch it back, so they can go through the lesson all over again, and they can also see themselves. If they were working side on at the time, they can then see what was happening. They can see what you were commenting on, what you saw. So this is a real help to pupils, and they can download it and put it in a file and keep it and refer to it. You can also, you can pause the recording, or you can stop it and start it again. So if I was going to do a breathing thing with somebody, I'd stop the recording and start it at the point at which I started the breathing thing, and then they've got that as a discrete recording that they can use. And it not merely gives them a video recording, also it also gives them an audio recording. So they can build up their own little recording library of Alexander, in particular, of their sessions, and that's a real help.
Penelope.
Yes.
Is it only the host can record a session?
No, I can choose to make you the host. And the way I do that if I go into those 3 little buttons that's beside your name, I could then press make you host.
But you have control.
Yes, I would have control. If you wanted,
Yeah.
if I wanted to get host back again, I'd have to get you to pass it back to me. Once
Okay.
you host, you can record, and some people get their pupil to do the recording, and then they don't have to bother to send it on. I
Okay.
tend to send people's recordings on. I don't know why I don't. I should really get into, because it's one bit of admin at the end that one doesn't really need. But sometimes people's recordings don't work, and then of course the session is lost. And I think that's why I have kept them, because I know I can make the recording reliable, and I don't know whether they will manage that. So when you first make a recording, Zoom will ask you at the end, can they have access to your documents? And you have to press yes, because what they do, and one pupil pressed no, and that was the end of the recording, it was lost. You pressed yes, and then Zoom makes a folder in your documents labeled Zoom, and that's where you will find the recordings afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Then how to send it to pupils, because of course video files are too big to send on email. The audio files will send, but the video files won't. And I use WeTransfer. Does everybody know WeTransfer? And some people don't. Yeah. So you just Google WeTransfer, and up comes this website, and you'll find a screen in it saying send something for free, and you can send up to 2 gigabytes. And you just put in your email, and you put in the email of the person you wanted to send it to, and you upload either the whole Zoom folder or a file and other files you want. And 2 gigabytes is quite a lot. So, and it's a free service, so it's great. And then they have a week to download it. Otherwise it's gone. So they have to get on and download it. Yeah, the record button, if people are using a phone, they can't record, or an iPad, they can't record unless they have a paid system, because with the paid system, you get the option of cloud recording. And it's only the cloud recording course that's available on phones and iPads. So if you're working off an iPad, you're going to have to pay to get I don't know whether you would on Skype, so it might be worth checking out other systems if that's the case. Okay, so anyone else want to ask any questions about recordings? We've covered it. Good. So how do we set...
Yeah, go on. Sorry. Do you know about recording session? My Zoom thing asked me a live session, a live stream and recording. Is there a difference between live stream and recording? Have you met this in your...
I don't quite understand live streaming. I think, no, what we're doing is not live streaming.
Okay, no, then forget it.
Let's not get into that. I think it's something completely different.
Cool.
Yeah. Setting up for a lesson. So when your pupil hasn't worked on a lesson on Skype before, on Zoom before, it's worth taking time to set things up well, because the first thing is that they need to find a room where they won't be disturbed. And that's, because we're all at home at the moment, is actually a crucial one that we specify. They need to be able to lie down, so they need to have space. They need to have books to hand. They need to have space where they can get back from their PC, because if they're lying down, they need to be probably 6 feet away from the camera. And if they are standing in a place where you can see the whole of them, they might need to be 9 feet back. So they need to be in a place where they can actually get back. And you're going to need to play around to find where it works. They need a firm chair, they need a yoga mat. So all these things, or something to lie on. So all these things are worth sending out in advance. And the other thing is that they need light on them. Now, everybody here I can see, but usually when I'm doing a group, there's various people that are just dark. And it's really no fun trying to do a lesson with somebody who has no light on them and is wearing black clothes. And I used to try and struggle on until I realized, don't be silly, you just have to stop the lesson and say, will you please play around until we find a room or a situation where you've actually got light on them. And if needed, I send them away and say, for God's sake, go and change out of those black clothes and come back with something light on. And it's tempting to be polite and struggle on. And I tell you, it's not worth it, because it really makes your life a lot harder. It is about taking time, this. And I think a lot of teachers find this aspect of online really frustrating and feel that time is being wasted. But actually it isn't really being wasted. I mean, I think time is wasted in one-to-one lessons in the room in different ways. It's just a time that we're not used to doing. So, for instance, if I wanted to work on my yoga mat, I need to bring the camera where it can see the yoga mat. And then when I go over to it, you will be able to see me on the yoga mat. Yeah. So it's you really learn how to direct people so that you can see them in the activities you're doing. And it's very much a learned skill. To start with, you might be fiddling around for ages and saying, put your camera up, put it down on a chair, put it up on a chair. And I've got much quicker at it. So that is a whole skill to online teaching in itself. Anyone like to comment on that?
I think the only thing to say about lighting too is not to be backlit like I am, the light coming from behind, because then that makes the person darker.
Yes,
so
absolutely. You must have light in front of you as well. My window is right in front of me. So, but I've also got a light there. So if it gets dark, I've got a light I can switch on. And I've also got another one to the side that you can't see. Well, I've got a room full of lighting at the moment. But it's worth having various lights that you can put on in the evening so that you can light from various angles. And persuading pupils to fetch lights and put lights on can be really difficult, because they can feel they're in their eyes. But it does, it's huge to get them to put enough light on themselves. And if necessary, get them to move from room to room. That's the other one. And for floor work, it really helps to put the camera level down onto floor level or just above. It makes it a lot easier when people are doing semi-supine. Because if you're looking down from above when somebody's miles away, if I was to work on myself on that yoga mat, it's just too far away and too high up. So again, get them closer, bring the camera down. It helps if people get a webcam, if they've not got a laptop that they can move around. Because a webcam can be put at different points. That's a webcam. Okay. How to start an online lesson?
You hear me? Penelope.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you always show the pupil what you are asking them to do? Or do you just...
Yes, I usually do, actually. Yes, I usually do. Vision, the people pick up on vision very much quicker than words, don't they? So, yeah. And it's also helpful to have, some people have an information sheet that they actually send out to pupils before the first lesson online that actually specifies all that. Jando does. It's quite a ferocious list, Jando's one, as you can imagine with Jando. It can also tell you if you do that, you can also put your payment details on, you can put your cancellation policy, you can put when they should pay by, or whether some people get people paying before the lesson. You can actually put all that on there as well. So it's quite a good thing to do, which sometimes I do and sometimes I forget. So how to start a lesson online? Because again, I think it can be different. I always begin with an up-close face-to-face chat, asking them how they are and how they were after the last lesson, if there had been one, and catching up with them generally. And I've been doing this for years anyway, but I think it's particularly important on the internet because it's a time of making a personal connection before you step back into sort of rather a more remote space. I started doing this after a fellow teacher made the joke years ago that if we met our pupils in the street, we'd have to stand side on to recognize them. And he said, we don't actually spend enough time face to face with our pupils. And the other thing I became aware of is that so often pupils come in and they're bursting with stuff they really want to tell you about. And, you know, I was trained just to put them straight in front of the chair and put hands straight on. And they're trying to tell you all this stuff and you're trying to quieten them down. And it's just, you know, a battle that's not worth fighting. So it's like, okay, sit in the chair, tell me it all, and then we can get that bit over with. But more than that, I can start hearing what's going on for them. We can start feeding back on what happened last time and where they're at. Are they agitated? Are they calm? Are they in pain? And one can start working out what you actually need to do in the session from that. Because there's so many more activities you're going to be doing online than just chair and table, assuming you're only doing chair and table anyway. You know, you'll be wanting to do, there's so much more possibility to bring in online because they are at home and they can work at their desk and they can fetch the Hoover and, you know, whatever. And I think one has to shake it up a bit and be creative. And so, and the other thing I do then is ask whether they'd like to work on anything in particular. Does anyone do that already? Ask pupils what they want to do. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes one has a plan that one makes together and sometimes they come with a direct request. And then you can send them off to find the right furniture and the right props and so on. Yeah. So once they're comfortable and we've got the initial chat out of the way and they've come quieter and you know what you're doing, when we begin work, we have to observe them closely. We can no longer just put our hands on and sort of feel what's going on. We actually have to use our eyes. For that, you can move between being close to the screen to observe them and standing far off to demonstrate and then moving back in again. And I have the game that whenever I stand off, I have to remember to take my spectacles, and when I have to come in, I have to take them off again. But that's just one of the games of online work. Some people will have it the other way around.
Yeah.
And but this observing, it's not just, oh yes, what do I think? It's like you're observing at an intuitive level. Alexander used to just stand there and observe people, and it was, people felt they were just being sort of drunk. He was sort of drinking them in. He was just absorbing what was going on, and then he would say, I put my hands where they're needed. And quite a lot of the first generation teachers would say that. I heard it from Erica, Heggie said it, Frank Pierce Jones said it, AR said it, put your hands where they're needed. And how do you know unless you've somehow absorbed that intuitive information through your eyes? And one of the things I've become aware of is the visual system. Huge parts of the visual system are actually operating at an unconscious level. So we're really allowing something to happen here. We have to, if I'm working with people to start with, I will get them. I won't just, you know, FM would observe what was happening for people, and then he would give them a diagnosis. He would tell them what was going on for them. You know, your pelvis is pushed forward or whatever. I like to get them to play around to discover that for themselves. Because again, in this medium, the more we can get the pupil discovering for themselves, the more we can get them building up their proprioceptive awareness, and the faster the process is going to go. So again, the more we can hand it back to the pupil and say, you tell me what's going on. Now let's play around. And you offer them feeding lines, you know, is your pelvis pushed forward or is it back? I don't know. Okay, so push it forward, push it back. Which are you doing? You know, you can get quite directive here in a way, and until they go, oh yeah, that's what I can feel. So you're building up, you're waking that connection between brain and body for them and waking them up into what they're doing. And so we have to be very clear in what we are asking of them. You can't fudge it. I've become aware of how much we can fudge it with our hands. You can't fudge it with this stuff. You've got to be very clear what you're asking the pupil, which means you've got to be very clear of what you're aware of. And then you've got to find the words to say it. If you want them to free their neck, what words are you going to use? And did it work? If not, try some different words. So words become very, very important, and the phrasing of words, and also the tone of voice of those words. That's another issue again. And the other thing is that we then need to get the pupils to find words to feed back to us, rather than just, well, it's sort of that happened, or it's sort of here, okay, now tell me in words. And the more clearly they can articulate it, again, the more clearly they are bringing their process to consciousness. So all this is forced upon us with online work that is something that really we could do with being using all the time if we are to do constructive conscious control. And this is a real opportunity where we haven't got our hands, and we've got to learn to use conscious constructive control and observation and clarity of thinking. The pupil is doing the work. We're not doing the work for them. They're doing the work for themselves. When somebody has had an online session, they go away knowing that everything that happened, they brought about, and therefore they can bring it about again. This is incredibly empowering to the pupil. I think that we say we teach the pupil to work on themselves, but when we only work hands-on without really any direction, we don't actually do what it says on the tin. I think there's almost a bit of a lie there in sometimes, and I think we can really address this with this. Now, when we don't put hands, I don't know about you, but when I first started taking hands off pupils, I would actually feel guilty that I hadn't given them an Alexander lesson. And sometimes at the end of those hands-off lessons, I'd just put hands on quickly at the end, 5 minutes. And it was really to salve my own conscience, because it didn't feel like a lesson if I hadn't put hands. That is just pure faulty sensory perception. And I've had people say, well, should I charge the same? Again, it's faulty sensory perception. If you've given them your full attention and your full direction for a full hour, or whatever the length of time is, you have deserved your full fee. No questions. You may charge a lower rate to start with, just so they can experience hands-off work. You might charge them half price for the first lesson just to get them going. After that, go back to full price. You are doing your job, and you're doing your job fully. So, but it will feel strange. It will feel wrong. Anyone felt that the first time they taught online? Yeah. Yeah. So we need to be creative. We need to follow a line of exploration and see where it goes, and let it take us out of the standard chair table and see what happens. Keep getting feedback, keep observing, and then just follow your nose. See where it leads. Start with what you feel confident in. There was one woman, just as she finished training, she said to Goldie, I don't really feel I know enough. And Goldie said, well, do you know a little bit? And she said, well, I do. I know a little bit. And Goldie said, well, teach the little bit that you know. And I think that's lovely advice. If you start with a little bit that you know, and then it will build from there. So start somewhere where you feel confident, and then let it take you somewhere else. But then every so often try something new. And if it doesn't work, you say, oh, we'll come back to that another day. You don't have to say, well, that was a load of rubbish, because they don't know. You just lead them into something new. If it doesn't work, lead them back again into something more familiar. And so you can play around. We are on a steep learning curve. When we first start teaching online, we are on a steep learning curve, learning a whole new skill set. Make no mistake, you are learning a whole new skill set, and it will take time. And you will feel unconfident, and you will feel like a new teacher all over again. And that's okay. And it's good to go into that unknown place again and go, oh God, I don't know. Why not? That's what we're teaching. So, but I think as teachers, we often don't want to do that. So we're going back to Alexander's original brief that we're teaching the pupil to observe themselves, to organize themselves, and to think for themselves. And as I say, I think hands-on work in a way muddied the waters. And it has almost become disempowering in cases for pupils and teachers. And I observe that this builds confidence in teachers and pupils. It builds confidence for everybody. Resonating with the pupil. This is one very dear to my heart. Now, for this, I need a volunteer who has never worked online. Who's going to be brave? What happens when the connection breaks during the lesson for you or the pupil? You wait patiently for it to come back again. If it really doesn't come back again, I send them my phone number and I connect with them on WhatsApp, and I just switch onto WhatsApp. We don't have a recording. WhatsApp is great. WhatsApp never fails me. That's my absolute bottom line. Otherwise, and sometimes we try Skype and we try FaceTime until we find there's so many options. Messenger, usually you can find one that works. I've never lost connection over everything. Always something works still, even if we lose the recording. And sometimes I'll just fetch a handheld recorder so that at least I can record an auditory if that happens. Yeah, resonating with the pupil. Is anyone willing to be a volunteer?
I will.
Enrique, lovely, thank you. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you to work on me. So I'm going to stand back. I'm going to open the window, excuse me. And now I want to stand where you can see the whole of me. So, okay, have you got me there? And I'm going to put myself, can you see me all right, Enrique?
I'm missing your forehead, but.
Missing my forehead.
Yeah.
Tip it up a bit. This is what I mean about you have to play around. This camera is not ideal for this. It's sort of.
So we assume that we've been working together for a while?
Yes, we are assuming just that. No, that's not going to work. Let's just try again. We assume we've been working together for a while. Yes.
Okay.
Can you see enough of me there?
I'm still, yeah, practically, yeah. Let's say yes.
I tip it a little bit further up. This is what I mean. You just have to play around. That should be it now.
Yeah, perfect. Great.
Now you got me. Right. Okay. But we're assuming some prior knowledge. Okay.
Okay. So let's assume that we've worked for a while. And I would say, so, can you tell me how you are standing?
Well, I'm standing normally.
Okay. Can you, so tell me, where are your hands hanging in relation to your butt?
Ooh, yeah, they're hanging behind me. That's interesting.
Okay. Do you think that's your habitual way of standing?
Yes, that's my habitual way of standing.
Okay, great. Very nice. Are you feeling any pain in your lower back?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just think of letting your hips come back a little bit. Can you think of your hips coming back? Okay, very nice.
That's great. So can I just ask a question? As you're doing this, are you directing me or are you also directing you?
Right now I was directing you.
Yeah, I thought so. Now,
Yes.
I want you to start again. And this time, I want you to see if you can drink into you what's happening in me so that you start feeling it in you. And then I want you to give the directions that you would need to use to bring yourself out of what you feel. Okay, does that make sense?
Uh,
Try it and see
okay,
what
I'll
happens.
process that at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
So I'm gonna go back into here, and if needed, put yourself in that position as well. If you want to resonate by, but
Yeah, the other thing is I would have to move many things around me. So
yeah. Okay. So just see if you can tune in at a somatic level, just sort of
okay,
drink in me and
okay.
feel it from the inside rather than thinking it.
Okay. Can you think of just softening your sternum?
Are you
Can you
thinking
think
that
of just
as well?
softening the front side of your body?
Are you thinking that as well?
I am.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Now, can you think of? I would ask you to think about maybe releasing your ankles a little bit. Thinking of your ankles not doing so much. Yeah.
Not sure about that one. Doesn't feel a safe position from which to release my ankles.
Yeah. But you're doing fine. You're doing fine. Just trust. No.
Yeah, keep going, Enrique. I can
I
feel
say,
you involved here.
yeah, I'm just trying to connect with that intuition.
Yeah.
Bring your attention to your breathing. Allow your ribs, your rib cage to open up. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could anybody else feel the difference between the first time and the second time? Did anyone else pick up on that? Yeah, it was very different, wasn't it? Yeah. So I was very aware that the first time it felt rather mechanical, it felt very cold. And I think that's so very often where we go to start with. We see all this going on and we just want to use our words. And it's mechanical and there's no connection. Did you feel that connection between us, Enrique?
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah, and it's as if then we're in the same room.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, and I could see you change it as well.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and I was actually thinking of what I was saying as well. So
Yes, you were really internalizing the whole thing, weren't you? It was very different. And we don't need our hands to connect. We don't need our hands to feel. This is the exciting discovery to make with online work. We can actually feel it without. Now, the magic doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's just amazing. And I've done sessions now where they've been in semi-supine, I've been in semi-supine as well. And I'm not actually watching the screen anymore, but I know exactly what's going on for them. Or I'm only seeing their head, but I know what their breathing's doing. I know where their feet are. You know, it's amazing what you can start knowing when you start letting this, drinking the person in. We're using much deeper brain pathways here. We're using empathic pathways. We're using much more unconscious pathways here, and it's beautiful. Yeah, I think everybody got that. Yeah. So, and for that we have to come to quiet. And so again, the more you can set up the situation where you're comfortable, the more you can come to quiet, and then the more you can make that resonant connection. Because if everybody's talking animatedly, it's not going to happen. Yeah. Anyone like to feedback on that?
Yes, I can. You know, to me, it's like the critical feature is how can the person really feel comfortable in the space and with the teacher and with themselves, so that they're not just pushing themselves around or thinking that you're pushing them around, so that they're not internalizing this is some dictum that they're supposed to do, and if they do it, then they're doing the right thing. And that's like so critical, I think, to make sure that this becomes a self-regulatory process, that it isn't something that you're asking them to follow the leader.
And it's where it becomes Alexander technique, isn't it? I mean, it's rather than just, you know, because otherwise, you know, wiggle your wrist, wiggle your hips, so we might as well be doing physio, as it were, or running an exercise class. It is where we involve the nervous system. On the other side of it, it is we need to bring the pupil to a place where they do feel safe and they do feel held, so that they can risk allowing the unknown to happen. Because I mean, I think there's been this assumption for many years that we couldn't take hands off because the pupil wouldn't willingly put themselves into a place that felt wrong. And I don't buy that one. I think that as long as you have this resonant connection and the person feels safe and the person is in spatial awareness, they can indeed let their bodies go into the unknown and they can let new things happen without you physically being present, but you are present. And they feel safe to let that happen. So we're really engaging the nervous system here. Yeah, Kayla.
When Enrique, when you kind of brought out and knew what you wanted Penelope to do, I felt it myself too, because it was not just between the two of you. I felt it in myself as well. So it was really, really nice. It's quite magical, actually, that it's virtually possible.
Yeah.
when the teacher is so in sync with him or herself or in balance, that it's so powerful. Yeah.
And isn't
Can
it
I say
amazing?
something? Yeah.
Well,
And also when I teach groups, sometimes there's one person who's really kind of bored because they didn't get it. And that's a very critical point for the teacher, not to go in there, just stay with yourself and really continue to use your Alexander. And then all of a sudden, the bored people, they started actually they come on board. Not always, but most of the time. It's interesting too. You can rein them in, but as more present you are in yourself as a teacher, you can rein the lost sheep in sometimes.
yeah, because that whole sort of energy of what was happening between me and Enrique, everybody was picking it up, and yet Enrique's in Spain, and you're in Westport, and I'm in Clare, and Glenna's in somewhere in America. I forget where you
It's so
said.
cool. It's really cool.
It's amazing because at this level, of course, there is we're not on the physical level at this point. We're on the quantum level, and at the quantum level, there is no space and time. So anything is possible. Yeah,
Is this the quantum field?
I think so.
I love it.
I'm going to stick my head out. It has to be. At the quantum level, there is no space-time. I think thought and consciousness happen at the quantum level. I'm not the only one saying that. There's lots of people much wiser than me or knowledgeable in those fields saying.
Hawkins? Einstein? Huh?
I don't know, but there's people out there. Yeah. So yeah, what work can you do online? I mean, really, it's what work can't you do online? You can't throw a ball to somebody. But one can pretty well do anything. You know, you can do chair work, going on toes, hands on back of chair. I can certainly get people to throw a ball from hand to hand. You can do inhibition games, breathing work, speaking work, whispered R, walking, squatting, lunging, yoga work, application work, playing an instrument, doing the household tasks, computing, semi-supine, embodiment work. You know, what else have people done online? I haven't yet got somebody to take the camera out into the garden and do the gardening outside, Alexander, but it would be possible, I'm sure. Running could be tricky because they'd be running past you too much, but yeah, anything's possible. Anyone want to add to that one? Alasni.
Hi. Sorry, yeah, I'm a bit under the weather this week. So anyway, no, even the running, if they send you a video, you can use them. And yeah, I took lessons with Jando as well, and yeah, I was amazed how helpful it was. And actually, about that you are not worth the money. I feel that the other way when I have a student that is on the table and they just want to do that and they leave and I haven't told them to do something on their own, I feel like I shouldn't take their money, because it's good, but it's like they have to do, I think they need both experiences, the table, but then to take something home to do on their own. So yeah. I think the other way around.
Absolutely.
Actually.
Yes, I'm totally wicked now. Actually, even when I'm online, in people in the room, I actually don't have my table put up. If they need a table work session, I actually have to put the table work up. So it has to be a real decision. And because it isn't there, they don't immediately go, "Oh, can I have a nice table turn, please?" I mean, because God hardly ever use the table.
I love it, and like I don't mind using it a little bit, but then I feel bad when they don't want to get up.
Yeah.
I don't want to push them out of the table because I used to love it so much, and I do yet. So, but I feel bad because I'm not giving them something practical.
No, good for you, Leslie. That's it. I mean, we have to teach. We are supposed to be teachers, and I think pupils do need to go away going, "That's what I'm learning." Yeah, and they like that. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
No, and it's really amazing, because I've been a teacher even with Glenna, and she's teaching from the States a movement lesson, and it's amazing because she's there, you are there, and you can feel totally. She makes you cry, like she was here. So it's
Beautiful.
I don't know. Yeah, it's real. It's real. And now this the experiment you did there with Enrique. Wow, fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, very good. You're in such a good shape, by the way.
Sorry?
You are in very good shape, by the way.
Thank you. Yes. 60 in August.
Wow. No. Wow.
Yes. Getting your pupils to make the leap to online work. Now, I rang all my pupils up because I just thought, if I send out a group email saying I'm working online, I will never hear from any of them again. So I rang them all up, and if I didn't catch them, I sent them a message saying, please ring back, without telling them what it was going to be about. And they needed a lot of talking to get them to risk it. But the big one they were worried about is this sense of connection. Was it going to feel like an Alexander lesson? And I just had to say, yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Try one and see what it feels like. And once they took the risk to try one, oh yeah, it does feel like an Alexander lesson, doesn't it? Yeah, that was useful. And they were surprised. And after that, they were willing to book in. And, you know, a lot of them now have been coming for months. So it can take a bit of persuasion. Some people, as I say, do a 20-minute free lesson to start with, just to try out the technology, just to talk about their problems, like one might do a free chat, but just to sort of check out the technology. And for one pupil who was very dubious, I said, well, let's do a half. We did that, and then we did a half-price lesson, just to, again, encourage her it was safe to have a go and that it felt right. Michaela, yeah.
So you're saying you offered all the people you called, your students, your former students, you offered them a 20-minute or a free talk on?
Only if they needed it. Some of them, I was very much playing it by ear. Those who were, quite a few of them just said, oh yeah, okay, I'll have a go next Wednesday. And that was it. We just jumped straight in. Others of them, you know, it was very much more cautious, particularly the older women. You know, we're in a farming district here.
Yeah. Percentage-wise from your clientele, how many came online? Can you tell?
Probably half of them. Yeah.
Wow,
half.
that's good.
Yeah.
You're very persuasive. Okay.
It was just getting them to have a go, you know?
That's good, yeah.
Have a go. Yeah. And pupils have now started ringing up again saying, are you back at work? And I've been saying, actually, I've never been off work. I'm working online. Will you have a go? And again, persuasion stuff comes in. And 2 pupils recently have just jumped straight in with online work, having never had lessons before. And that's been great. We're now on lesson 3, and it's, you know, it's going well. And they have no preconceptions, which is nice as well.
Penelope, may I ask, this is not a strictly online teaching, but it is related in a way. When a new pupil comes in, do you ask for a set number of lessons to begin with? Like, oh, you know, we need to have 5 bookings or 10 or whatever? Or do you let them like try once, and if they want to come back, they come back or not? How do you approach that?
What I say is, I sort of give them an outline. I say the first lesson and the second lesson will tell you whether it's for you. So try the first lesson, try the second lesson, and see if it feels right. I think it was Martina who said to me, if a pupil comes to lesson 3, you know you've got them. And I think she's got something there. Those first 2 lessons they can drop out on. Once they get to lesson 3, they've decided it's for them. I suggest to them that 5 is the number that will give them a sense really of whether it's going somewhere. 10 is will give them a basic toolkit, but 20 to 30 is really what they need in order to embed it in their systems. And I say, and some people are still with me 10 years later, and some people absolutely have completely changed lives after 2 lessons and I'll never see them again. And so, and I tell them that, and I say it's in your hands, because I think people are shy of paying for, I find people are shy of paying for 10 lessons up front, and that if they do pay 10 lessons up front, they then find it difficult to pay for the next 10. So, whereas if they're paying every week, they're in a role. by the time, and they don't really notice 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
That's good.
Yeah. The dangerous if they then ask for a receipt and you send a receipt for 15 lessons at once and they look at the price they've paid and you don't see them again.
Oh, really?
So if they want, that's happened a few times. They've had a receipt for the whole thing and I never see them again because they look and say, God, I've paid 1,500 quid. Yeah. So if they want receipts, do them in bits. Yeah. How do you approach it?
Me? Well, to be honest with you, I haven't had many clients. I graduated last year, so about a year ago. So I really haven't had a chance to. But the few clients that I've had, that's what I say. With one, you basically is like doing nothing. Two, 1 or 2 is an initiation.
Yeah.
5 gives you a sense. 10 may like you just like you said, really. I mean, kind of give you like a solid underpinning of the technique, and then it's very personal with the people, like you said. That's what I say. Again, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to test it, but that's my idea of how I would do it.
Yeah. I think I've heard teachers in the past be very shy of saying really it needs 20 to 30 lessons. And I used to say to pupils, I don't now, but I used to say, please don't start unless you are potentially willing to do 20 to 30 lessons. I don't actually say that now, but I do think they need that idea of the overall up front, because if they start off thinking in their heads they're only going to need 3 lessons, and then they discover somewhere along the line that you're thinking 30, then they're cross. So I think we do need to be honest about the whole process. And I think that's important.
Can you repeat again? What are you telling them when they take 20 to 30 lessons? What are they able to change for life? This was sound really good what you said.
That embeds it for them.
Embedded.
They make it their own. Then they're much more likely to hang on to it. Yeah. Glenna?
I have a thought about it is one of the ways that they might commit is because you can tell them that in this particular time of turbulence, you can shift the burden of payment in a sense off of them and say, well, you're in a time that actually this work could be so much more powerful for you. Knowing that you're in something where you are really having to deal with multiple stresses, and so that's one way to sort of get them a little bit more in the door rather than thinking about their emptying wallets, which well, I'm not working as much or whatever they're thinking. The other thought I had is I found PayPal enormously effective, because in PayPal, which I assume you have PayPal, everyone can have PayPal or something like that. People often have money that maybe people are paying them something, so they have money that they can also use on PayPal that they can then spend on you. So it's not like they're paying you, by check or something every week, or they're paying by a receipt necessarily even, but that they actually have an account that has a floating amount of money in it, and it kind of makes them feel like they're not spending anything. At least I felt that way. If I've paid someone else and then I have an account, or someone's paid me and I have money left over that I can pay someone else, then I feel like, oh, I'm paying it out of this whole separate place. It's not coming directly from, well, it is, but it doesn't feel like I'm writing a check, Yeah. And that's quite a way to sort of get people thinking about the possibilities of how you can be paid.
Good.
Interesting one. I hadn't thought of that, but I certainly get people, I say, instead of thinking it like, putting a bucket under a leaking ceiling, you're actually changing the roof.
That's right.
Expensive at the time, but it's an investment in the future. This is you're investing here in your future. This is an investment for you. It's not just running to the osteopath and getting a quick fix. So I do talk about that sort of thing. Yeah. So payment, one can use PayPal, but PayPal is expensive. It's very useful for people who are abroad. I send people my bank details and they can set up a transfer on their bank account, and once it's set up, then they can just go in every week, and very often they'll pay 2 weeks at a time. and it's very quick and easy. And I think most countries have something like that. Certainly AIB does. Everybody in Ireland does.
Is this free? Is this free?
Yes, it's free. It's a free
Yeah.
service. Yes, it's money that goes between countries that costs.
Exactly.
But you can send money. We could send money to each other for no cost at all, just with bank
Send me your
transfers.
money.
Do it on their phone.
Yeah. Send me your money.
You send me some, and I'll send you some.
Penelope, what system is that? I missed that. What system is that you can send money?
Well,
The bank.
just through the bank. It's just through online banking. You know, there's in online banking you can transfer money to another Irish account, and I'm sure the same is true in Spain. In Spanish accounts, you could transfer money to another Spanish account.
You have to pay though. You have to here. You have to pay a fee.
No.
Do you have to pay a fee? We see Ireland, we don't.
No.
I think a lot of countries you don't.
Unless it's in the same, unless it's from within the same bank, you know. Unless it's
Same bank, yeah.
but if it's another bank, you have to pay a fee. But it's, I mean, it could be. I mean,
yes. So this will change between banks and between countries, but certainly in Ireland, it's a free service, which is useful. And I dare say, even in Spain, it's not very much. It's probably less than PayPal. Yeah, so that's the payment thing. And the other one is that certainly in Ireland, you know, people who'd been taking lessons with me for a while and just paying cash on the day, it was taking them, you know, they'd say, oh, I'll set up the bank account this evening, and then 5 days would go by and nothing. So I'd send them a reminder and then another reminder, and eventually they'd get round to it. And over time, they've got more used to the rhythm of paying, you know, pretty close to the day. For a while, I sort of put my foot down and said, look, would you pay me before the lesson? So that actually brought things up to speed. The new pupils, I noticed there's no hesitation. They're setting things up the same day because they haven't been used to the cash. So that's just a dynamic. So you can specify. And teachers, I think Ireland is very good about not paying for a while, but you always know you'll get it. Whereas in other countries, people are less trusting.
Has everybody experience with the little kind of machines you can get for little money that way I can pay with card on the spot? When one day they come with one-to-one again.
Yeah, not online, Michaela.
You want a big.
Not online.
Oh, that's true.
I have Apple Pay if you have these clever watches, whether you can send money to each other on Apple Pay, but I don't.
Online, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give it to me.
So the really important one though, if you're getting them to do your bank transfer, is where it says receiver's reference, get them to put their own name, because otherwise they will write Alexander Technique. And if you teach 6 people in the same week and they all just put Alexander Technique as the reference, you will not have a clue who's paid and who hasn't. So you've got to train them to put their own name and possibly the date as well. I haven't managed to get mine to do the date as well, but the name is at least there. And then you know who's paid you. And then you have to go back through your diary each week and just check against the phone as to, you know, who's paid. So you have to keep track of it. Legal stuff. If you show pictures from an anatomy book and you video it, you are probably breaking copyright. So just to be aware of that one. I'm slowly accumulating a set of images, a lot of which I'm drawing out myself, images from Wikipedia that I can show, and I can then pass them to the pupils, and I know that I'm not breaking any copyright. So that's something to be aware of. You can draw them yourself, you can draw on the whiteboard. Yeah, but that's something to know. The other one is I tend to make very clear with people that they do not post their lesson videos online. They do not post any material videos online. We can assume these things, but it's good actually to say them. And I say them to groups as well. You know, let's all just make a pact here that anything that happens in these sessions stays confidential, and that and everyone just nods, but it's worth saying. We can assume, and then it's not said. And it's always worth saying these things out loud. If you send them material you've written, put a copyright on the bottom of it. You know, it's just making explicit the implicit, because there are rogues out there, unfortunately. Not that I've fortunately ever met one in lessons, but you know, who knows? They're out there. Insurance, we've all been very aware about insurance. My insurance company, I rang them up. If you're not sure about your insurance company, ring them up and say, am I insured to teach online? They will almost certainly say yes, but they might ask some provisos. Mine said they wanted to know that I was giving my pupils the same level of attention that I was as if they were in the room with me, which was an interesting one. STAT wants the STAT insurers want people to do risk assessment.
Yes.
As if you're going to be able to risk assess their room. So to me, that means get them to look around their room before they start, pick things off the floor, check cables, put the cat out, so that if they walk backwards in the session, they don't trip over something and then sue you for getting them to walk backwards. And check that any chair that they're on is secure, you know, that sort of basic stuff. But I think that's what that means. Yeah. So yeah, and then where do we go from here? Well, I've been running my online course now. I started back in the end of March, and the first 10 sessions happened, and out of the 56 people who started, Don dropped out. It wasn't for you, was it, Don? But and one other person dropped out within 20 minutes. But the other 58 started. 56 actually did all 10 sessions, and of those, 45 have gone on to an advanced course. So I must have done something I liked. It's very exciting. We're now putting it on video, which is why my dear Alexander studio is now a video studio. And the video course is up and running, as some of you will know. And where's Margaret?
Yes. Yeah, I'm here.
You're
trying
here.
to keep my iPad from falling.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I've started Penelope. I have done the first module, and yeah, I found it really good. And Penelope it's jam-packed with ideas, and it's great to have an exchange buddy. Penelope sets us up with another teacher with more or less the same experience, and we can practice what we've learned in the module together. And it's really good for getting those things like distance between the camera and where you're standing, and all that stuff takes so long. So it's great to practice it with somebody who's not paying you and thinking you're wasting time, or, you know, it's fabulous. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you. Thank you. And the first module, we learn how to free the neck without being able to put your hands on, and how to get them to go in and out of a chair and make the right shapes, as it were, and not curl all over the place without putting hands on. So it's dealing with all those online questions. How do I do this without hands? Yeah.
Question, Penelope. Will you repeat this course? Is it one time one you do, or what's your idea about that?
On video now. Margaret's
on video. So you can buy the modules.
Yep, absolutely. You sign up and you get the modules. The module arrives in your inbox every week. You can access the next module. So
gosh, you're such a wow. Really going forward. Excellent.
Oh, it helps to have a photographer for a husband as well. It also helps having been an ex-model, so I'm not afraid of cameras.
That's good. So I will talk with you later about. I will get in contact with you.
Well, do, because yeah, and I've got very experienced teachers on there and beginner teachers, and they're all getting along just fine. And then every fortnight, I'll be organising the first one for your group quite soon, Margaret. The group that's already running, that's further on. We're all getting together on Zoom every fortnight where they can ask questions. They email me in between. We sort buddy exchanges. Yes, and
very good.
And you can do it from anywhere in the world. I've got Australians and somebody in Tahiti and someone in Japan and people from all over Europe and
North Mayo too. North Mayo too.
North Mayo, yes, is in the world, so it can join in too. Yeah. Okay. So cool. Yeah, I'll send you all the link afterwards, and you can have a look at it. And I'd love it joined in, because you know, this is building the skill set you need, and it's also, of course, giving you a pre-look at the material that I'm actually got in the book. So it's the material from the book, and it's really going back to what Goldie was really getting us to do. So it's all sorts of things happening in there.
Penelope, can I ask you something just while I have you in front of me?
Sure.
Your lessons are an hour long.
Mine personally, yes.
Yeah. Do you ever find that if there isn't semi-supine maybe at the end of a lesson, do pupils ever find it quite intense?
Ah, yes, I forgot to talk about that. Yes, online is intense. It's true.
Yeah.
And the other thing, because it is so intense, it can be easy to go from this to this to this to this to this. And it's important not to do that, because you can very quickly overwhelm them. And so very often I'll do, say, 2 or 3 things. Maybe I'll do half the lesson on something rather quiet. I don't always do semi-supine, but I usually do something that's quiet, maybe vision work, maybe breathing work, maybe something lying down, getting them to direct, maybe something on spatial awareness, and then something more active, or half the lesson chair work and half the lesson application work. So I break it up in different ways. And then get them at the end of the lesson to tell me what they will take home with them.
Okay, yeah.
And I review at the end what we've done and the 2 or 3 points that they're going to be working away at themselves. And also what we've done that they can't yet work away at. Because that's
Sorry, said that again?
equally important to tell them what, if you can see that they're not quite getting something yet, to say, look, don't bother to try that one.
Okay.
You can play with it if you want, but please don't feel you have to. These are the ones you've got. These are the ones to have a go at.
Right. Yeah.
That can be quite reassuring, because otherwise they won't feel like a failure because they haven't got that bit.
Yeah.
So really.
Yeah. Actually, the vision work is very calming.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's there's various ways of bringing people to quiet online, so that you can take them into new place, and vision is one. Breathing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Penelope. I was going to email you, but when I have you in front of me, it's just handy. Thank you. Thank you.
So, any other questions at this point?
No. Really good. Glad I came. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Organizing.
Thank you all for coming. And,
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
I'll mail on the video link and the notes and the link. Yeah.
Excellent.
So much for sharing it all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Penelope.
Thank you, Penelope.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, Michaela.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye, Glenna.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Margaret.
Bye.
Rosemary, Enrique, Teresa, Alasne.